There's a distinct silence that happens when someone finds out you're not on Instagram. It's often followed by a slight, subtle tilt of the head from the other person. They look at you as if you just told them you don't own a microwave. And then comes the predictable question, almost always exactly the same. Wait, why not? There is something genuinely fascinating about the person who watched the whole performance get set up, looked around at everyone putting on their costumes, and deliberately decided to sit this one out. People often assume they must be technophobic, hiding away in a digital cave somewhere, or they assume they are simply completely asocial, entirely disconnected from the modern world. But that explanation falls apart incredibly fast when you look at who they actually are. In reality, many of these individuals are deeply social and highly engaged with their friends. They are actually very active online, just not there. They frequent other, deeper digital spaces. You'll find them deep in forums, passionately arguing about things they genuinely care about. If you strip away the branding, you see what the platform is at its core. It is an arena built almost entirely around endless visual self-presentation and public metric counting. The entire design is quietly asking you on a continuous loop, how do you look right now? For a lot of people, constantly answering that evaluative question becomes genuinely and profoundly exhausting. Self-determination theory identifies autonomy as a core human need for genuine personal flourishing. We thrive when our behaviors are driven by deep internal values rather than external pressures. When a reward system relies entirely on external metrics like follower counts and dopamine hits, it creates a conflict for someone who has made peace with not needing that applause. Why do many Instagram avoiders still use Facebook? Because Facebook functions much like a community bulletin board. Instagram carries an implicit expectation of a curated aesthetic. Many people find this endless visual presentation deeply alienating. YouTube, however, is a completely different psychological conversation. It actively rewards depth when you want to understand something. An Instagram carousel gets a fleeting 8-second glance, but a 30-minute deep dive gets watched all the way through. Instead of endlessly broadcasting yourself out to wait for feedback, you pull information inward and quietly sit with it. Instagram inherently triggers a continuous, often unconscious life audit. Every post becomes a data point for upward social comparison. You measure your reality against impossibly polished, glowing lives, wondering if your own home looks depressing in comparison. A 2024 study showed higher self-criticism across all age groups. Using it over 3 hours a day takes a measurable toll. Eventually, the heavy mental overhead of recalibrating your self-worth against curated highlight reels simply stops being worth the cost. We all share a fundamental psychological need to be witnessed, but actual close friendships and communities meet that need completely. The people who opt out are not just one single personality type. Both introverts and extroverts land in the same place via different routes. What they tend to share is a reasonably stable internal reference point. They possess a sense of self that doesn't depend on continuous outside validation. The largest experimental study on this involved over 35,000 participants. Remarkably, this massive research was conducted in direct partnership with Meta. Deactivating Facebook or Instagram for 6 weeks led to measurable improvements. Participants experienced more self-reported happiness and clear reductions in anxiety and depression. For a meaningful portion of the population, the math is incredibly simple. The mental cost-benefit calculation simply doesn't land in the platform's favor. Those who have already done that math and decided to leave are actually just ahead of a recognition that's becoming more widespread. These people have made a quiet, intentional peace with going deep. They prefer that depth rather than spreading their attention thin and going wide. They have completely accepted the fact that their daily life lacks a highlight reel, and they have noticed that their life genuinely doesn't need one. If this resonates, there is a bundle of specific 7-day guides and planners. Each guide gives you a specific daily action, not just empty information. They are explicitly built to rebalance your dopamine and actually fix your sleep. They help you clear the mental backlog and rebuild your focus one day at a time. As people grow, their sense of self naturally consolidates and strengthens over time. It no longer needs to be confirmed by strangers on the internet every 48 hours. This marks a recognized developmental shift for people in their late 30s and beyond. They reach a point where continuous external validation simply starts to matter much less. Far from being asocial, many of these individuals are highly active in online groups. You will find them deeply engaged in passionate debates about things like espresso machines. They often use community bulletin boards for practical, real-world local engagement. They participate in occasional heated discussions about important local planning decisions and events. Platforms like YouTube reward depth, drawing in users who genuinely want to understand complex topics. They want to know exactly how an engine works or what a weird medical symptom means. 30-minute deep dive into the details of a complex historical event. This gets watched all the way through by these deeply curious and internally motivated people. The platform's comparison audit involves painful, unconscious data points about our daily lives. Users constantly wonder if their own kids are less polished or if their apartment looks depressing. The continuous loop forces users to measure themselves against highly curated, unrealistic highlights. They compare their reality to someone who is somehow thin and glowing at a very nice location. Some who leave briefly miss the psychological feeling of simply being witnessed by others. They miss the noisy environment where life milestones got publicly acknowledged and celebrated. But those who stay off the platform find a much more substantive substitute. They rely on actual conversations and real close friendships rather than carefully curated aesthetics. People who opt out often can't fully articulate why it bothered them. They simply say they just didn't enjoy it, or it made them feel weird. Without using clinical language, they are usually describing a heavy, invisible burden. It is the cumulative, exhausting weight of that constant social comparison process. The demographic that leaves is not just one specific personality type. It includes the introvert who simply prefers not to be seen publicly. But it also includes the highly social extrovert who found it all deeply boring. Both of them have landed in the exact same place via very different routes. And this isn't just intuition. Researchers have looked at what actually happens. The largest experimental study on social media abstention involved over 35,000 participants. Remarkably, this massive study was conducted in direct partnership with Meta itself. They found that logging off led to measurable improvements in self-reported happiness. This doesn't mean the platform is inherently destructive for every single user, but for many, the mental cost-benefit calculation simply doesn't land in its favor. If you want to step back, There are guides designed to rebalance your dopamine. They help your brain stop constantly craving that endless digital noise. They also help clear the heavy mental backlog that builds up over time, especially when your attention is constantly being pulled in 12 different directions. Each guide gives you a specific daily action to rebuild your focus, because actionable steps are the exact thing most psychology content skips entirely. These resources are built around actually fixing your sleep, rather than just endlessly thinking or reading about how to fix it. They are designed to help you deliberately rebuild your lost focus, taking it slowly and purposefully, just one day at a time. Each of these 7-day guides provides you with a specific daily action, bridging the gap between knowing what you should do and actually doing it. They don't just hand you a massive pile of empty information, because endless information without practical application leaves you feeling completely stuck. Providing these actionable steps is the critical missing piece of the puzzle. It is honestly the part that most psychology content skips entirely. Ultimately, the people who opt out and don't look back find genuine peace. They have made a quiet peace with going deep rather than going wide. They have fully accepted the fact that their life lacks a spectacular highlight reel, and they have noticed that a well-lived life genuinely doesn't need one. If any of this resonated with you and you want to step away, there is something here that is genuinely worth your time. You can find the bundle of guides and planners linked below. Check the pinned comment to start taking action today. It is entirely possible to live a rich, deeply fulfilling reality, beautifully unbothered by the continuous noise of the digital crowd.